In this video, I'm going to be going over some things that I found across a few of the mixes I heard. One of the things was the kick drum sometimes wasn't cutting through in the mix. So I'm going to take a moment and discuss EQing the kick drum. So that's the track all the way on the left. It's soloed right now, and I have an EQ on it. So let me explain what I've done here. I have three adjustments. The two boosts you see are a boost at 80 hertz. Notice that I'm using a peak EQ, not a shelf, right? That would be a shelf. I'm using the peak because I don't want to boost all the low frequencies. I want to boost the well-defined low frequencies. And then I've got a boost up here around 2.5 kilohertz. Why would I boost a kick drum, a bass drum? It's got the word bass in it. Why would I boost it up there? That's where the slap attack's going to be. And then I have a scoop in the middle where I'm cutting some 400 hertz out. That's what this band over here. And actually, the article I assigned you to read this past week suggests doing that because you do get some muddy qualities in there. So for a lot of instruments, the mud is more at like 250, but a lot of times for kick drum, right around 400. So let's play this. Let me bypass this and play a little bit of the kick drum. Let me make sure I've got some kick drum highlighted here without the EQ, and then we'll turn it on and see what those different bands are doing. Okay, now I've got the EQ back on. Let's see what that sounds like. Alright, so I like that, at least hearing it soloed. How did I find the exact frequencies? Basically, by playing and moving the frequency controller around, you can actually move the knob, or I can move it on the graph, and listening for where I hear the sound that I'm looking for, either to boost or to cut, and that would be called sweeping. A lot of times when you sweep, you really exaggerate the gain and narrow the Q, and maybe not that much, but that's really exaggerated. Move this around. All right, now the thing is, we got to do our bass management. So I'm going to temporarily move the bass guitar right below the kick drum, and I'm going to put an EQ on there as well. I'm going to switch my my edit window to show inserts, so I don't have to go to the mix window, and I can go ahead and put an EQ right on there. I got a lot of choices, but I like these ones that come with Pro Tools. So the key thing here is let me actually have both EQs open at the same time. I'm going to hold down Shift and open the second one. I'm going to kind of line them up actually. And visually, I'm going to make sure the graphs don't overlap. I want them to sound tonally distinct from each other. So that's not going to happen. If they are EQ'd the same, they have to be EQ'd distinctly from each other. Okay, so now let's look at the bass EQ. I don't have that much going on. I do have a low-end boost. Main thing I want to show you, though, is that it's not the same frequency that I'm boosting on the kick drum. The kick drum's boosted around 80, and this is more around 100. It's actually 108 if we look over here. And 108 on the kick drum doesn't have much going on. So the point is to not overlap them. One thing I actually could also do is even cut with the high pass filter, cut out some of the extreme lows to really let the kick drum have that space. Let's see how that sounds. So I'm actually high pass filtering, low cut on the bass, and then give it a little more oomph around 108, whereas the kick drum's got it going on around 80. Not overlapping is the key there. The key to no masking. Okay, now let's deal with the intro to the song. The intro to the song just has the main vocal and a guitar and some keyboard, and there's not even drums or bass, no rhythm section kicking in. Yet on some of the projects, I had trouble hearing the vocal through the guitars and the keys. In some projects, the vocal was clear, but it was because folks did something like this with the EQ, right? They threw on an EQ, and maybe you swept around and you ended up boosting something probably around 2.5 kilohertz. All right, let's solo this vocal a moment and play it with no EQ and then with a boost in that area.
When you got too much going on, and it's been going for much too long. You can't take one breath, it might slow you down.
Okay, so when we don't have that EQ boost right there, it's like the vocal sounds nice and mellow and dark and mysterious, and then when we put it in, it sounds kind of nasally.
When you got too much going on, and it's been going for much too long. You can't take one breath, it might slow you down.
I don't know too many singers that want to sound nasally, but this makes it cut through, but it brings out nasally tones, which is actually what an SM57 or 58 mic will do largely as well. But that's one reason we don't use them in the studio. We use them for live to help things cut through, but in the studio where you can sculpt things a bit more, uh, you don't really have to do that. What you can do is go to the guitar tracks that it's competing with and cut the vocal presence range around 2.5 kilohertz. Let's turn this on and put an EQ on there. And let's try giving that a cut up in this area. Right around 2.5 kilohertz was where I found the vocal presence on the voice. And let's do that on the other one as well, the other guitar track. Just going to option and then drag, copy that EQ. I might want to actually EQ them separately. Actually, it's down here. Okay. But for now, I'll start with that as a reference point. So let's bypass the EQs and see what's going on.
When you got too much going on, and it's been going for much too long. You can't take one breath, it might slow you down. When you got too much going on, and it's been going for much too long. You can't take one breath, it might slow you down.
So I do hear that the vocal cuts through it a bit better now, and that's without even a compressor on the vocal. Let's go ahead and put a compressor on it. Which one do we want to use? Let's keep going with the freebies. Put this one on it.
When you got too much going on, and it's been going for much too long. You can't take one breath, it might slow you down.
Now, if I want some more upper end on the guitars, I could find other frequencies to boost that are not in the vocal presence range. Um, let's see how that sounds. I'll do that on the other guitar track also.
When you got too much going on, and it's been going for much too long. You can't take one breath, it might slow you down.
Alright, so the overall theme here, as with the kick and the bass, is to avoid masking to make these things more tonally distinct from each other, to use subtractive EQing to deal with frequencies that are masking each other.